If you are listening now, let me begin by offering you a quiet reminder. This is not a hurried journey, not a lecture to be consumed quickly, not a tale that demands your alert attention. This is a voyage meant for rest, for stillness, for drifting. If at any moment your eyelids begin to close, if thoughts dissolve into dream, let them. Sleep is welcome here. You do not need to hold tightly to every word. For the rhythm of this journey is not linear, but circular, flowing like a current beneath the frozen seas. It will carry you gently, whether you follow consciously or float away into dream. Before we set out together, I invite you, softly, to support this channel if you wish. A subscription ensures that these long, quiet explorations continue to be shared, guiding more travelers into calm landscapes of learning and rest. Yet if all you do tonight is listen, breathe, and close your eyes, that is enough. The ice will wait for you now. Let us begin. Not with fire, not with thunder, not with restless cities, but with stillness, with white horizons, with a quiet as deep as eternity. We enter a realm of frost. Ice, patient and enduring, becomes our guide. To some, it may appear empty, barren, cold, but listen more closely. Ice is not silence. It is memory. It is the breath of time held in crystalline form, carries the echoes of climates long gone, forests that once stood where glaciers now sleep, oceans that rose and fell like the chest of a dreaming earth. Every frozen layer is a page in a book older than history, older even than the human mind's earliest stories. Ice is the archivist of the planet, and tonight we listen to its whisper. The frozen world moves at a rhythm too slow for the heartbeat of civilization. It does not hurry. A glacier advances not in days, not even in years, but in centuries. Ice sheets thicken and retreat over tens of thousands of years. The breath of frost is measured against epochs, not ours. And so to truly hear it, we too must slow down. Our pace tonight will not be rushed. Words will fall like snow, light and unhurried, layering themselves softly until they form something deeper, denser, enduring. Let this journey unfold as gently as snowfall itself, settling on your mind until the weight of calm rests upon you. Imagine, for a moment, that you are lying at the edge of an immense frozen plain. Above you, stars shine with a brilliance made sharper by the cold. Each breath leaves your lips in a soft cloud, a ghost that lingers briefly before dissolving into the night. The horizon glows faintly blue beneath the touch of moonlight on ice. Around you, the air is hushed, still immense. No rustling leaves, no hum of insects, no murmur of rivers, only the faintest sigh, as if the earth itself is sleeping beneath a blanket of frost. In that vast quiet, you begin to hear something subtle, the sound of the planet's slow exhalation, as though glaciers themselves breathe. Their lungs the size of continents. Before humanity walked upright, before fire, before words, ice was. Here it has carved the earth like a sculptor. Valleys now lush with fields were once gouged by glacial teeth. Lakes were born from its retreat, their basins cradled in stone pressed by its weight. Mountains were ground down, sharpened or reshaped. By its patient touch, the very landscapes we know carry the fingerprints of ice. And still it lingers, in polar crowns, in frozen peaks, in glaciers, spilling slowly toward the sea. The story of our planet is not only written in stone or ocean, it is etched into frost. The journey into ice begins with the smallest of things, a snowflake. Each one, delicate and unique, is a fragment of geometry written in water. From the invisible vapor of the sky, hexagonal crystals unfold, each arm branching in patterns of symmetry and chance. A single snowflake falls softly, perhaps vanishing upon the tongue of a child, perhaps melting on the surface of a river. But when snowflakes gather endlessly, layer upon layer, pressed by time, by gravity, by their own weight, they become something. Vast, they become fern, then ice. The fragility of a snowflake, multiplied beyond count, gives rise to landscapes that endure for tens of thousands of years. From weakness, strength, from ephemera, eternity, and eternity remembers. Within each layer of ice, small bubbles of ancient air remain trapped, pockets of breath from skies long vanished. Scientists drilled deep into the frozen cores of Greenland and Antarctica, withdrawing cylinders of ice that glitter faintly in the light. Each layer is a diary entry of the planet's past. They reveal when Earth warmed, when it cooled, when forests flourished, when deserts expanded. They carry the fingerprint of volcanic eruptions, the signature of storms, the delicate shifts of atmosphere. When we read ice, we are reading memory itself. Listening to whispers from tens of thousands, even hundreds of thousands of years ago. Ice does not forget, but it is not only science that finds meaning in ice. To the heart that listens, ice is also poetry. Imagine the vast icebergs adrift in polar sea cathedrals of translucent stone, glowing with a light that seems to come from within. Their forms are sculpted by waves and wind, towers and arches rising, collapsing, reforming. They crack with deep, resonant notes, like the low hum of a great organ. In the faint glow of sun that never rises high, icebergs gleam in shades of aquamarine and sapphire. They are moving galleries, works of art crafted by patient, invisible hands. To stand before one is to feel the immensity of time itself, solidified, afloat. Luminous in ice sings not only in form, but in light, in the long polar nights, where months stretch without dawn. The sky blooms with auroras, curtains of green and violet shimmering above frozen plains. The ice below reflects them faintly, as though earth and sky mirror one another in silent conversation. To lie upon the frost and gaze upward is to watch the heavens themselves breathe color. And in that stillness, time loosens. Hours dissolve. What remains is only the rhythm of your own heart and the eternal whisper of the frozen earth. Let us walk now deeper into this silence. Imagine yourself stepping across a frozen lake. Beneath the clear ice you glimpse fissures, bubbles, fragments of light trapped within. Each step echoes faintly, a deep, hollow tone that spreads through the frozen sheet. The ice holds you, yet it reminds you of its depth, its mystery, its fragility. The air is still, crisp. Snow gathers around the edges, each flake falling soundlessly. To walk upon ice is to walk upon a boundary between air and water, between solidity and fragility, between life and memory. It is a threshold, delicate yet enduring, and so too is our journey tonight. We walk upon the boundary between waking and sleeping, between listening and dreaming. If your mind drifts, it is no loss. Just as rivers vanish beneath glaciers and emerge again miles away, your thoughts may slip beneath the surface of sleep and return later. Altered, softened, yet still part of the journey. The ice does not rush, nor shall we. Consider now the glacier immense and steady. It begins high in the mountains, where snow accumulates beyond melting. Layer upon layer, year after year, snow presses into ice, and ice begins to flow. It creeps downward, carrying rocks, grinding valleys, shaping cliffs. Though imperceptible to the watching eye, it moves, always moves slowly, inexorably, toward the sea. And when at last it reaches the coast, pieces break away. Icebergs drift, wander, dissolve into waves. Yet even as they vanish, more ice presses forward behind them. The glacier endures, endless in its patient descent. It is not a river of water, but of time. A frozen river carrying centuries within its flow. And just as glaciers move unseen, so too does our night. You may not notice the passing minutes, but they drift onward, carrying you deeper into quiet, into calm, into sleep. Let yourself flow. With them, resist nothing. Rest as the ice rests. Breathe as the ice breathes. Slow, steady, eternal. Ice has been both a danger and a sanctuary to humankind. Two early peoples. It was a barrier, a force to be feared, a wilderness inhospitable and immense. Yet it also offered shelter caves of frost, frozen rivers to cross, ice as a shield from invaders. In its starkness, it taught resilience. Silence. It inspired stories. Myths grew from the breath of glaciers, gods of frost and spirits of snow, legends of white dragons and endless winters. Even today in our scientific age, we cannot help but see the poetry. Ice is both real and mythical, both material and dream. It stands at the edge of what we know and what we imagine. And tonight, as you rest, it stands at the edge of your waking and dreaming, a threshold once again. 1 foot here, 1 foot there. Perhaps now your body feels heavier, sinking into the surface beneath you as snow sinks into earth. Perhaps your breath has slowed, mirroring the patient exhalations of frozen landscapes. Perhaps thoughts drift across your mind like flakes, light, brief, dissolving. Allow them. Do not chase them. They are part of the weather of the mind. Them fall, melt, fade. Beneath them, stillness remains. The ice remains. It is said that ice has a voice, not one of words but of sound. A crack, sharp yet resonant, echoing through glaciers. A groan as 2 sheets press and shift. A soft hiss, where meltwater runs beneath the surface. To listen to these sounds in the stillness of polar night is to feel as though the planet itself is murmuring in its sleep. And in a way, it is. The earth dreams in ice, and we are the listeners. Tonight, you listen, whether awake or already. Drifting away, you are part of that listening. Share in the memory. We began this journey with an invitation, gentle and quiet, to enter the realm of frost. And though our path will take us deeper into the myths, the geographies, the histories locked within ice, we always return to this beginning. A circle, unbroken. The same hush, the same calm, the same slow exhalation. As the glacier flows, as the snow falls, as the stars glitter above frozen plains, so too does this journey return to where it began, to stillness, to memory, to sleep. Rest now. Ice keeps watch. If you are still with me now, awake or already drifting, remember that this journey through ice is not meant to demand your alertness. It is a soft current. You may drift in and out. You may follow every word, or let them dissolve into the background like snowfall. Either way, the story continues to carry you. You're moving deeper now, deeper into the slow rivers of frozen time. We're moving into the breathing of glaciers. Glaciers are not static. To the hurried eye, they appear motionless. Great white bodies sprawled across mountains or stretching to the sea. But like all things in the natural world, they live, they move, they change. A glacier is a frozen river, not of water but of time itself, and it breathes in rhythms far slower than our human pulse. To learn their language, we must slow our pace, adjust our heartbeat to theirs, and listen carefully. Tonight we will. The birth of a glacier begins with something as small and fragile as a snowflake. Thousands, millions, billions of them fall upon the same slopes year after year. Each winter lays a new sheet, and each summer may melt only part of it, leaving behind a residue of frozen memory. Snow upon snow, pressed by its own weight, transforms. Air is squeezed out. Flakes lose their delicate branching arms, become grains, then fern, then at last solid ice. This transformation is slow, but inexorable. With each passing year, snow deepens into memory, memory deepens into weight, and weight deepens into movement. A glacier is born not from sudden violence, but from patient accumulation. It is persistence embodied. Once formed, the glacier begins to flow. It may seem paradoxical. How can something so solid, so cold, so heavy flow? But ice, under great pressure, behaves as both solid and liquid. Its crystals deform, sliding past one another, creeping downward under gravity's pull. The mountain slope becomes a slow channel. Crevasses open where tension pulls. Ridges form where compression folds. What seems motionless is in fact alive with imperceptible journeys. Rocks are carried, valleys are carved, landscapes are sculpted. A glacier is a chisel, a sculptor's hand that takes tens of thousands of years to shape its masterpiece. Listen carefully, and you will hear how glaciers breathe, not in the way. Our lungs rise and fall, but in the great rhythms of advance and retreat, in colder centuries, glaciers inhale, spreading outward, growing, pressing deeper into valleys, reaching farther toward the seas. In warmer centuries, they exhale, pulling back, retreating, leaving behind the scars of their passing. moraines of stone, kettle lakes, carved basins. This inhalation and exhalation is the breath of the cryosphere, the frozen lungs of Earth. To measure them is to measure the heartbeat of climate itself. And though their breath is slow, each cycle lasting centuries, it is steady, it is real, it is alive. Imagine lying at the edge of a glacier, listening. At first you hear only silence. But wait. Beneath the surface, deep cracks resound, like the groan of wooden beams in a great cathedral. Meltwater trickles through hidden tunnels, murmuring softly. Occasionally, the thunder of ice breaking away echoes through the valley. These are not random noises. They are the voice of the glacier, its breath made audible. Each groan is a sigh of pressure released. Each crack is a whisper of movement. Each trickle is the quiet exhalation of melting. Together, they form a symphony of slowness, a music of ice. Science allows us to listen in another way. By drilling into the ice, we uncover its story. Within the layers, compressed year upon year, is written a climate diary that stretches back nearly 1,000,000 years. Dust from deserts, ash from volcanoes, salt from ancient seas, and bubbles of ancient air, all of these are trapped in the ice. When we study them, we are reading the breath of glaciers as written text. They tell us when Earth cooled, when it warmed, when oceans receded, when forests grew. They remind us that the breath of glaciers is not separate from our own, for when ice retreats, seas rise. When ice advances, lands open. The lungs of the planet and the lungs of humanity are joined. But beyond science, glaciers are poetry carved into the earth. Picture a valley carved into a U-shape, its walls steep and polished. This shape was once a glacier's path. Picture a cirque, a bowl scooped from the side of a mountain, where snow gathers even now. Picture fjords, deep inlets where seawater now flows, but where once a glacier dug tirelessly. Every curve, every groove, every lake in these regions is an echo of frozen breath. Long after the glacier has retreated, the shape of its breathing remains. Glaciers are also memory bearers for humankind. For ancient peoples, they marked the edges of the known world. Norse sagas spoke of icy giants. Himalayan mythologies described snow gods dwelling in eternal whiteness. Even today, the names of glaciers carry stories: Vetnajökull in Iceland, Siachen in the Karakoram, Franz Josef in New Zealand, Athabasca in Canada. Each is more than ice. They are symbols, guardians, thresholds. They remind us of both danger and beauty, fragility and endurance. They are teachers in patience, in persistence, in humility before forces greater than ourselves. And glaciers breathe, not only through centuries of advance and retreat, but through their daily cycles. In sunlight, surface ice melts, water trickles downward, pressure builds, and streams beneath the glacier surge. By night or cold, the flow lessens. The ice grips the valley floor tighter. This diurnal rhythm is a small echo of their greater breath. Even in a single day, glaciers expand and contract, inhale and exhale, shift and sigh. They are never still. Their breath continues, unbroken. Imagine now that you are standing on a glacier's surface. The ice is not smooth, but fractured with crevasses, blue chasms opening into darkness. The air is sharp, pure, almost metallic with cold. Beneath your feet you sense movement, though impossibly slow. We're standing upon a living body. Beneath lies a world unseen. Rivers of meltwater, chambers of ice, tunnels echoing with liquid sound. Above, the sun glints off white and blue, and in the distance, the glacier curves downward toward its terminus. Perhaps there at the snout, you would hear the crack and tumble of icebergs calving into the sea, a glacier's exhale made visible. This breathing has shaped the world we live in. North America's Great Lakes, Europe's rich farmlands, Asia's river valleys, all are gifts of glacial breath. Without glaciers, these places would not exist as they are. Humanity itself was. Shaped by ice, 4 glaciers determined where we could walk, where we could settle, where water would flow. Even now, billions of people depend on glaciers for drinking water, irrigation, and life itself. Their breath sustains us, though we often forget it, and yet their breath grows troubled. Today, in our warming world, Glaciers are retreating at a pace faster than in many thousands of years. The lungs of the planet are exhaling deeply, too deeply. The archives they hold are melting away before we have read them fully. The frozen rivers of time are shortening. The breath of glaciers is still present, but it grows shallower. It is a reminder of our own breath tied to theirs. A reminder that the balance of climate, delicate and vast, depends upon these frozen lungs. Still, for tonight, let us not dwell in alarm, but in listening. The glaciers continue to breathe. Even as they retreat, they speak, they sing, they sigh. Their memory remains etched in the valleys, in the lakes, in the oceans they shape. Their poetry is not lost, only changing. And in our quiet journey, as you drift into sleep, it is enough simply to listen. So let us circle back, as glaciers always do. They advance, they retreat, but they return again, cycling through time, patient and enduring. We too return to where we began, the breath, slow, steady, gentle, as your body sinks further into stillness. Feel your breath mirror theirs. Inhale slowly. Exhale slowly. As glaciers breathe in centuries, so you breathe now in moments, yet you are joined. Your breath is the glacier's breath. Your rest is the glacier's rest. And as you drift further into calm, know that the frozen rivers of time continue to flow, continue to shape, continue to whisper. Long after you close your eyes, they breathe. Long after you dream, they breathe. And long after words fade, their quiet, patient breath remains. Rest, then, in their rhythm. Rest in the breathing of glaciers. The story of ice is not only about the glaciers that flow through valleys, nor only about the snowy peaks that crown our mountains. Beyond them lies something far greater, older, vaster. The ice sheets, immense continents of frozen time. They are not rivers of ice, but whole kingdoms of it. Realms so wide that human steps seem insignificant. Horizons so white that sky and ground blur into a single endless canvas. Tonight, we will walk gently into these kingdoms, Antarctica and Greenland, further still, into the memory of prehistoric ice, where entire worlds rose and fell beneath frozen skies. The ancient ice sheets are more than landscapes. They are Earth's libraries, its vaults, its sleeping guardians. Antarctica, at the bottom of the world, is the crown jewel of ice. It holds nearly 70% of all the fresh water on Earth, locked away in silence, pressed under kilometers of frozen weight. Its ice is not a thin cover, but a continent's. Mountain ranges buried, valleys hidden, lakes sealed beneath. It is a world within a world, unseen yet immense. To stand upon its surface is to stand upon 3 miles of history. Beneath your feet, snowflakes that fell 1,000,000 years ago are still preserved, compressed into blue crystal, layered with dust, air, and memory. Antarctica is not only a place, it is an archive, holding secrets of climates older than humankind. Greenland, though smaller, is no less mighty. It is a vast shield of ice, draped across the land like a colossal blanket, rising into domes and ridges, descending into fjords, where glaciers meet the sea. Greenland is alive with ice stream scrivers within the ice sheet that carry frozen matter outward toward the ocean, calving into icebergs that drift away like fragments of memory released. Its surface is marked by snow dunes, melt ponds, blue channels that snake across like veins. When the sun lowers, the ice glows with hues of silver, pink, and violet, reminding us that frozen landscapes are not lifeless, but luminous. Together, Antarctica and Greenland breathe with the planet. Mass balances, sea levels, their presence, controls climate winds and currents. When their ice grows, seas fall. When their ice melts, seas rise. They're the great scales upon which Earth's waters are weighed. And like scales, they are delicate, sensitive to imbalance. But these modern giants are only the latest chapters in a longer story. Prehistoric Earth was shaped again and again by ice sheets that advanced and retreated in cycles. During the Pleistocene, over the last 2.5 million years, ice covered vast swaths of North America, Europe, and Asia. These sheets were so massive that they pressed down the land beneath them, carving plains, redirecting rivers, sculpting the face of continents. Imagine the Laurentide ice sheet spread across Canada and much of the northern United States, more than 3 kilometers thick. Imagine the Scandinavian ice sheet stretching from Norway to Russia, burying forests and valleys beneath white silence. Where cities now stand, where rivers now flow. Once there was only frozen weight, centuries deep. These prehistoric ice sheets were not only barriers but sculptors. They carved the Great Lakes of North America, leaving behind freshwater oceans. In the heart of a continent, they hollowed out fjords in Norway, creating deep, winding inlets that today hold salt water, but once held ice. They scoured bedrock, leaving behind polished stone, striations, boulders carried far from their origins. These erratics, as geologists call them, are the forgotten luggage of glaciers, stones deposited hundreds of miles from their homes. Storytellers of journeys long past, and within the ice, secrets endure. By drilling deep into ice sheets, scientists recover slender core cylinders of frozen memory stretching thousands of meters long. Each layer represents a snowfall, a winter captured and preserved. Within our tiny bubbles of air, each no larger than a grain of sand, yet within each, an atmosphere is sealed. Air from 50,000 years ago, 100,000 years ago, even 800,000 years ago, waits in silence until released. These bubbles are time machines. When they are studied, the ancient breath of the planet speaks again. Carbon dioxide levels, methane concentrations, traces of pollen, volcanic ash, they reveal a rhythm of warming and cooling, a dance of ice ages and interglacial periods. The story they tell is not random, but patterned. A breathing cycle of Earth itself. Imagine holding such a core in your hands. To most eyes, it is a rod of ice, clear with faint rings like tree growth. But listen closely, and it is more than ice. It is the whisper of mammoths walking across frozen plains, the sigh of forests retreating as ice advanced, the faint trace of distant volcanoes clouding skies, the quiet hum of oceans cooling and warming. It is memory condensed, the diary of Earth. The ice sheets are teachers of time. They remind us that our human centuries are but moments in their scale. A single breath of their Zan advance, a retreat lasts tens of thousands of years. We build cities, fight wars, tell stories. The ice waits, shifts, writes its long poetry across continents. And though their pace is slow, their influence is immense. When the great prehistoric ice sheets melted, they released floods so vast that coastlines shifted, rivers drowned, and new lands opened. Human migration itself was guided by these rhythms, as ice retreated and valleys became habitable, as seas rose and islands vanished. Our history is entangled with theirs, though we often forget. Antarctica holds within its depths another secret, lakes sealed beneath the ice, touched by sunlight for millions of years. Lake Vostok, buried under 4 kilometers of ice, has been isolated since before humans walked upright. In its dark waters may live forms of life unknown to us, surviving in silence, evolving without interruption. These lakes are not only scientific curiosities, they are symbols of endurance. They remind us that life finds a way, even in the heart of ice, even beneath crushing weight and absolute darkness. They remind us that the story of Earth is not only written on its surface, but hidden deep within. Greenland, too, whispers its ancient secrets. In recent years, scientists drilling into its bedrock found remnants of ancient soil, preserved for millions of years beneath the ice. Within were traces of forests that once grew where ice now reigns. Imagine Greenland not white, but green, with rivers, meadows, and trees. The ice sheet that covers it now is a newcomer compared to the long span of Earth's history. This revelation tells us something profound. Ice comes, ice goes. Landscapes transform. Nothing is fixed, though in our brief lives it may seem eternal. And yet, while change is natural, the pace matters. The prehistoric cycles of ice sheets breathed slowly, guided by Earth's tilt, orbit, and solar rhythms. Today, however, we see a quicker breath, a sharper exhale. Greenland loses ice faster than ever recorded, its glaciers retreating, meltwater pouring into the seas. Antarctica's great shelves calve enormous icebergs, some the size of cities, drifting into the Southern Ocean. The ancient libraries are melting before their stories are fully read. Still, tonight we rest not in alarm, but in reverence. The ancient ice sheets are not gone. They are still here, vast and enduring. When you imagine Antarctica, imagine its stillness. Its white plains stretching endlessly, the silence broken only by the wind's soft hum. When you picture Greenland, imagine its domed expanse. Glowing blue in the midnight sun, its ice rivers shining as they flow outward. These places exist now, alive, present, breathing slowly with the planet. Even as they change, their presence is profound. The ancient ice sheets are mirrors of our own being. Just as they inhale and exhale across millennia, so too do we breathe in moments. Just as they preserve memories within their layers, so too do we preserve memories in our minds. Their patience teaches us patience. Their endurance teaches us humility. Their silence teaches us to listen. And as you lie here, listening to these words, you too are part of this breathing rhythm. Your breath joins theirs, small but connected, brief yet meaningful. So let us circle back, as we always do. We began with the vastness of ice, the continents of frozen time. We wandered through their archives, their cores, their memories. We glimpsed the prehistoric sheets that once ruled over continents. And now we return to breath, the slow inhalation and exhalation of ice through ages. Just as glaciers breathe daily, so the ice sheets breathe through epochs, their rhythm steady, their song quiet. As you drift further, imagine lying upon the ancient ice, hearing nothing but wind and silence. Beneath you are millions of years of memory. Above you, the stars wheel slowly in their own eternal patterns. Around you, the air is pure, crystalline, timeless. And within you, your breath slows to match the ancient rhythm. You are not separate from the ice. You are part of its story. You are part of its breath. Rest now, within the embrace of the ancient ice sheets. The oceans are the Earth's lungs, breathing through tides and currents, whispering across coasts and continents. Yet in the highest reaches of the world, at the crown of the planet, there exists a different kind of sea. One that does not simply ripple with waves, but stiffens into silence. A sea that freezes into stillness. The Arctic Ocean, small compared to its siblings, is not bound by land so much as it is bound by ice. It is a frozen sea, a shifting mosaic of white plates and drifting flows. A place where water hardens into mirrors of glass, and the line between solid and liquid blurs with the breath of the seasons. It is here, in this ocean of silence, that the Earth keeps its northern vigil. To imagine the Arctic Ocean is to imagine a body of water hidden beneath a blanket that is never quite the same. It's never quite still. Pack ice stretches across its surface, fractured into flows that drift with wind and current, colliding, partying, joining again in an endless dance. This ice is not permanent, not fixed, but seasonal, breathing with the year's rhythm. In winter, darkness spreads for months, the sun absent, the cold deepening. Ice thickens, widens, extends outward from the pole like a growing crystal. The sea is sealed, its surface frozen into a sheet that creaks and cracks but holds fast. Then comes summer, when light pours unbroken for months, a sun that circles endlessly without setting. Under its gaze, ice retreats, thins, melts into blue pools that shimmer atop the flows. Open leads appear, dark water winding like veins through white. The Arctic breathes in winter, exhales in summer, its pulse slow but certain. This frozen ocean is not barren, though to human eyes it may seem desolate. Beneath the ice, life teems. Phytoplankton bloom in the brief summer light, tiny green cells that feed the chain of existence. Fish swim below, adapted to frigid waters. Seals rise through breathing holes, resting on floes like pale shadows. Polar bears wander across the ice, lords of this frozen sea, hunting and moving with the rhythm. a freeze and thaw. Migratory birds arrive in their millions, nesting in the brief window of warmth, their cries breaking the silence. The Arctic Ocean is not an empty witness, but a living one, holding communities of creatures shaped by its rhythms, yet beyond life. It is memory that defines this place. The Arctic ice holds witness to change. Just as Antarctica's ice sheets preserve ages in their cores, the Arctic's floating ice preserves patterns of the present, recording each year's growth and retreat. Satellites trace its breath, measuring how far it spreads, how much it thins, how early it melts. These measurements are not only numbers, they are the heartbeat of the Northern Sea. And the heartbeat has changed. Where once thick, multi-year ice dominated, now thinner, younger ice drifts, more fragile, more fleeting. The Arctic is becoming more liquid, less still, its frozen mask retreating further each decade. But tonight, in this quiet journey, we are not dwelling in loss, but in presence. Let us stand still upon the drifting ice and listen. The silence is deep, but it is not empty. Beneath our feet, faint groans echo as the ice shifts, cracks spreading like slow thunder. Water laps softly against the flow's edges, a muffled murmur. Above, the sky stretches vast, sometimes lit with auroras that ripple green and violet, sometimes dark with stars that glisten like shards of ice themselves. The frozen ocean is a cathedral of stillness, a place where Earth seems to pause, where time itself slows to match the patient drift of flows. The rhythm of polar seasons is unlike anywhere else on Earth. Near the equator, days and nights alternate with reassuring regularity. But here, at the top of the world, day and night themselves change form. For months, the sun refuses to set, circling overhead in an endless loop, bathing ice in golden light that never fades. For months, night reigns, with the sun hidden, the world lit only by the moon and the shifting curtains of auroras. Time in the Arctic is not measured by hours, but by seasons of light and dark. The sea responds in kind, blooming with life when light returns, retreating into stillness when darkness settles. The pack ice is not a uniform sheet, but a shifting mosaic. Leads open and close, ridges form as flows collide and buckle. Pressure. Ridges rising like frozen mountain ranges across the sea. These ridges are reminders that the ice is alive, restless, sculpted by wind and current. Even in stillness, there is movement. Beneath, the ocean currents swirl, carrying warmth and salt, whispering with deep tides that connect all seas. The Arctic is both isolated and connected, sealed by ice, yet tied to every other ocean by hidden currents. And so the frozen ocean is both fragile and immense, both temporary and eternal. It vanishes each summer, reforms each winter, yet across centuries its breath endures. It has been here since before our species arose, its cycles shaping the climate that allowed humanity to thrive. The Arctic Ocean is not only a witness to change, but a participant, a regulator, a guardian. Its ice reflects sunlight back into space, cooling the planet. Its waters drive currents that circulate heat, balancing climates. Frozen silence is not passive, but active, part of Earth's great machinery. Imagine. Then, lying upon this drifting ice, letting yourself float with its slow movement. There is no sound but wind, no sight but horizon and sky. You are carried gently by currents, across a sea that is both water and crystal. Time here feels different, stretching, dissolving, merging with the slow breath of the Arctic. Of ice, each groan, each ripple, is part of a larger rhythm. Music too slow for hurried ears, but clear to those who wait. The Arctic has always been a place of stories. Indigenous peoples, who have lived in its embrace for thousands of years, tell of the ice as a living presence, a companion. They read its signs, its thickness, its shifts, its songs, with intimacy. To them, the frozen ocean is not hostile, but home, not silence, but language. Their traditions remind us that ice is not absence, but presence, not emptiness, but fullness. It holds meaning, sustenance, and spirit. The frozen ocean is also a mirror of impermanence. Just as flows form and drift apart, so do our own lives, our own moments. Just as seasons bring light and darkness, so do our days bring change and rest. The Arctic whispers to us that nothing is fixed, yet everything belongs to a rhythm. To resist the rhythm is to feel disoriented. To accept it is to find peace. And so, as the Arctic Ocean breathes, so do you. Inhale with its winter silence, exhale with its summer release. Let the rhythm of the poles guide your rest. You are not separate from this sea, but part of its cycles, part of its witness. When you close your eyes, you'd adrift like a flow, carried gently across the waters of time, the Arctic Ocean. Frozen and drifting is a silent witness to ages past and ages yet to come. It remembers the mammoth and the hunter, the first sails to cross its surface, the explorers lost in its labyrinth. It remembers centuries of freeze and thaw, of light and dark, of silence and song. And it will remember us too, our brief passage, our breath upon its surface. It is both fragile and enduring, fleeting and timeless. As you drift further into rest, imagine once more the frozen ocean. Imagine its white expanse, its drifting flows, its endless horizon. Imagine the sun circling overhead in silence, the auroras, dancing across the night sky, the stars glimmering like frozen fire. Imagine the slow breath of ice, in and out, steady, calming. You are part of this breath, part of this frozen witness. Sleep now. Within the embrace of the Arctic's silent sea, the frozen world is often imagined as empty, blank sheet of silence where only the wind and the snow reside. Yet in truth, the ice is not a void, but a stage upon which life has carved its most patient, resilient performances. In the frozen realms of Earth, from the Arctic's drifting floes to Antarctica's towering shelves, creatures endure in ways that defy imagination. Each life is a whisper against the cold, a testament to survival at the edge of possibility. These beings are the guardians of endurance, the keepers of frozen secrets. The breath and heartbeat of worlds where breath and heartbeat are most difficult. Let us begin with the figure most emblematic of the Arctic, the polar bear, the great white wanderer. It is not merely an animal, but a presence, a moving shadow across the ice, a creature sculpted by necessity into elegance and power. The polar bear does not fear the cold, for its fur is a mantle of warmth, its skin black beneath to drink in the faintest sun. Each step it takes presses deep into snow, yet it walks with ease, gliding across floes as though born of the ice itself. It is hunter, mother, wanderer, survivor. In the endless daylight of Arctic summer, it roams in search of seals waiting patient hours by breathing holes, listening with an intensity honed by millennia. In the endless night of Arctic winter, it drifts with the floes, a silent king upon a shifting throne. Its story is not only of strength, but of fragility, for as ice retreats, its kingdom shrinks. Yet for now, the polar bear walks still, breathing. With the rhythm of ice, a white ghost who reminds us that survival is both grace and tenacity, beneath the surface of frozen seas. Where the water hovers at the edge of freezing, yet does not yield to solid, another kingdom thrives. Here, in what might seem inhospitable, krill shimmer in vast swarms, tiny as whispers, yet mighty in their numbers. Krill are not merely creatures. They are currents of life, drifting clouds of sustenance that feed whales, seals, penguins, and birds. In the darkness beneath Antarctic ice, they graze upon algae that grows on the underside of floes, turning invisible light into nourishment, invisible effort into survival. Imagine them, countless and glimmering, like constellations turned inward. Stars swimming instead of shining. Without krill, the Southern Ocean would fall silent, its great whales without feast, its birds without nourishment. These small beings are the pulse of the frozen sea, the invisible chorus upon which the visible players depend. They are fragile and yet eternal, as old as ice, as numerous as snowflakes, as vital as breath, smaller still, yet no less wondrous. Are the microbes that inhabit the ice itself, than the crystalline walls of glaciers, within the pores of permafrost, within the brine channels of sea ice, microscopic life endures. These microbes are ancient, their lineages stretching back millions of years, surviving cycles of freeze and thaw that would silence almost any other form. To peer into ice is to peer into hidden galaxies of life, colonies that flourish in darkness, feeding on minerals, exhaling gases, waiting patiently. They remind us that even in stillness, there is motion. Even in silence, there is song. They may seem small, but their significance is vast, for they alter chemistry, shape ecosystems, and whisper of life's ability to endure extremes. When ice cores are drilled and brought to light, the microbes within stir again, as though time were only a curtain pulled back, as though centuries of slumber were but a pause. Consider, too, the seals who breathe between ice and sea, inhabiting both worlds at once. They rise through openings in the floes, their sleek bodies breaking the surface, like shadows emerging from below. Their eyes are wide, dark pools reflecting a world of water and light, and their whiskers sense vibrations that humans cannot feel. They nurse their young upon ice, where the cold should mean death. Yet warmth flows through them, preserved by blubber and instinct. To hear their calls beneath the ice is to hear a haunting, otherworldly song, voices echoing through frozen halls. Resonant and slow, as though the ice itself were speaking, seals are not merely survivors but singers, weaving their existence into the very soundscape of the frozen sea. And then there are the penguins of the southern ice, those upright voyagers in feathered suits who waddle with clumsy grace across snow yet dive with astonishing speed into the sea. Their colonies are gatherings of warmth in a land of cold, their voices a chorus that fills the air with life. Emperor penguins, tallest of them all, endure the harshest winter known, huddling together for months in darkness while storms rage, each bird leaning into the other for survival. They incubate their eggs upon their feet, covered by folds of feathered skin, protecting life even as temperatures plummet. To see a penguin chick emerge is to see resilience in its purest form, a fragile creature born into a land of difficulty, yet carried by the strength of its parents and the unity of its colony, in the frozen world where solitude seems dominant. Penguins remind us of community, of shared warmth, of survival not through isolation but through togetherness. Whales to find sanctuary in these realms. Despite the cold, despite the difficulty, they arrive in summer, when krill bloom and waters teem their immense bodies, gliding through icy seas with a grace that defies their size. The blue whale, largest creature to have ever lived, feeds upon creatures smaller than a fingernail, its vast mouth opening to engulf swarms of krill, its throat grooves expanding like ripples across the sea. The humpback sings, its voice carrying through frozen waters, echoing for miles, songs that are both communication and mystery. Music written in patterns we are only beginning to understand. To witness a whale amidst the ice is to witness a paradox, a giant sustained by the smallest, a warm-blooded titan thriving in a land of cold. Even the birds of the frozen realms tell stories of endurance. Arctic terns, slight and white-winged, undertake migrations that span from pole to pole, following light across the globe. Their journey is the longest migration of any bird, a circle that defies distance, a rhythm tied to seasons. They live between extremes, born in one pole, flying to the other, their wings carrying them across oceans as though they were mere ripples. These terns are reminders that life does not only endure the frozen world, but embraces it, weaving the ice into its cycle, making the poles not ends but beginnings. Life in the frozen realms is not easy, but it is beautiful. Each creature here is a lesson in persistence, in adaptation, in patience. They are not here by accident but by design, sculpted by evolution to thrive where most would perish. Their stories are not tragedies but triumphs, even in the face of fragility. The polar bear's patient hunt, the krill's hidden bloom, the penguin's huddle, the whale's song. The microbe's silent endurance all are verses in the poetry of survival. And as we rest within this story, let us listen to what they teach. The frozen realms remind us that life is not only about abundance, but about resilience. It is not only about thriving where it is easy, but about enduring where it is hard. It is not only about conquest, but about harmonia, about listening to the ice, to the sea, to the rhythm of seasons. Each creature that endures here does so not alone, but in relationship. Tied to the cycles of others, woven into the fabric of survival, the frozen realms are vast and silent, yet within them, life whispers constantly. The polar bear pads across the floes. The seal sings beneath the ice. The penguin huddles in storm and shares warmth. Krill shimmer unseen, yet feed millions. The microbes slumber and awaken in time's frozen chambers. These whispers rise together into a chorus of persistence, a song that is both delicate and eternal. And so, as you drift further into rest, imagine yourself surrounded by them. Imagine the white bear moving across the horizon, its breath visible in the cold air. Imagine the flicker of krill beneath the ice, countless and shimmering. Imagine the whale's low song vibrating through frozen waters, carrying you like a lullaby. Imagine the penguins gathered in their huddle, warmth shared in unity. Imagine the microbes waiting in silence, keepers of time itself. You are not alone in the frozen world. You are among companions who remind you of resilience, patience, and quiet strength. Sleep now within the frozen realms. Sleep in the company of creatures who endure. Sleep as part of the rhythm of ice and life, steady, unbroken, eternal. The ice has always seemed inhospitable to human presence, a realm of silence and storm, of endless white horizons that test the body and blur the mind. Yet even here in the frozen world where cold presses with relentless weight, humans have walked, lived, endured, and dreamed. Their footsteps echo softly across centuries, pressed into snow that soon drifts over, erased by wind yet remembered. In story, to speak of the ice is not only to speak of glaciers, flows, and seasons, but of people who have made their lives upon it, and those who sought to cross it for knowledge, survival, or ambition. It is to listen for the whisper of moccasins upon snow, the crunch of boots hardened by frost, the quiet prayers of those who knew the ice's home, the gasps of those who entered it as strangers. The first and deepest footsteps are those of the indigenous peoples of the Arctic, who for thousands of years have woven their existence into the rhythm of frozen lands and seas. The Inuit, Yupik, Chukchi, Sami, others did not arrive at the ice as conquerors, but as companions, listening carefully to its voice and learning to live in harmony with its demands. Their knowledge was not written in books, but in the memory of generations passed through stories told beside fires, through the practices of hunting, clothing, shelter, and survival. To the outsider, the ice seemed unyielding, but to these cultures, it was alive, breathing, giving, and guiding. Imagine the Inuit hunter, dressed in caribou fur layered with care, stepping lightly across frozen ground with sled dogs pulling ahead. His tools, fashioned of bone and ivory, are not crude, but refined by centuries of innovation. The igloo he builds is not a crude dome, but a masterpiece of geometry. Snow blocks arranged to hold warmth, their spiral pattern locking together with precision. Inside, a lamp burns seal oil, casting a golden glow upon the curved walls, while the wind outside howls unheard. For the Inuit, the ice is not an enemy, but a partner, providing seal, whale, fish, and caribou, offering snow that insulates, ice that supports, wind that carries sleds. Life here is harsh, yet never joyless, for stories are told, songs are sung, and dances rise even in the coldest night. The ice is not void but home, and footsteps upon it are steps of belonging. The Sami, herders of the northern tundra, walk in rhythm with their reindeer, guiding them across snowy plains that stretch. Two horizons unseen. Their homes, lavu tents of wood and hide, stand firm against storm winds. While joik songs rise in the night, chants that do not describe but embody, carrying the essence of landscape, animal, or memory. The Sami know the snow's many forms distinguishing textures and weights, reading the weather in its patterns, guiding life by its signals. Their footsteps pressed alongside those of reindeer. We've stories of migration, of resilience, of intimacy with land that others call barren, but they call sacred. In Siberia, the Chukchi lead their reindeer herds across frozen tundra, their sleds drawn by teams that seem to fly across the snow. They live at the edge of the Bering Sea, where ice meets water, where whales are hunted with songs of respect, where spirits are believed to dwell within ice and wind. Their world is not one of lifeless white, but of spirits, animals, ancestors, and dreams, all intertwined with the frozen land. Their footsteps echo with reverence, each step a recognition of ice, not as obstacle, but as kin. To walk with these indigenous cultures is to see the frozen world through eyes of intimacy, not fear. They do not endure despite the ice. They endure because of it, shaping their lives to its rhythm, allowing its silence to teach, its challenges to refine. Their footsteps on ice are steady, belonging, eternal. Yet into this realm of belonging came others, explorers, sailors, dreamers from distant lands whose footsteps upon the ice were hesitant, often desperate, and at times tragic. The age of exploration sent men into the polar regions, drawn by curiosity, ambition, and the promise of discovery. They sought the Northwest Passage, a route through Arctic seas to link Atlantic and Pacific. They sought the South Pole, the Northern Pole, the very ends of the earth. Their ships creaked in icebound seas. Their breath froze in the air, their journals filled with both wonder and despair. The ice, indifferent to ambition, tested them all. In the Arctic, the voyages of Franklin's expedition stand as haunting. In 1845, two ships, Erebus and Terror, sailed with more than 100 men, seeking to chart the Northwest Passage. They were last seen entering Lancaster Sound, after which silence fell. Years of searching revealed little until decades later, relics were found. Silver spoons, journals, bones marked by hunger. The ships had become trapped in ice, the men forced to march across frozen wastelands, their footsteps faltering, their bodies giving way to frost and famine. The ice swallowed them, their story frozen into legend. To think of those men walking across desolate ice, their boots heavy, their minds desperate. To feel the weight of human fragility against the vast patience of frozen seas. In the South, the race to the Antarctic pole brought triumph and tragedy alike. Roald Amundsen, with quiet precision, reached the South Pole in December 1911. His footsteps lightened by careful planning, by dogs that pulled sledges, by knowledge borrowed from indigenous peoples of the North. His rival, Robert Falcon Scott, arrived weeks later, weary, frostbitten, and defeated by delay. The journey back, Scott and his companions perished. Their tent buried beneath snow, their final words written with stiffening hands, "We shall stick it out to the end," he wrote. And so they did. Their footsteps upon the ice were steps of courage, yet also of surrender to forces beyond control. And yet there were also stories of resilience, like that of Ernest Shackleton and his crew. Aboard the Endurance, trapped in Antarctic ice, their ship crushed to splinters. They endured months upon floes, sailing lifeboats across storm seas, surviving upon patience and will. Shackleton's footsteps across the mountains of South Georgia leading his men to salvation remain among the most legendary in exploration. They remind us that even against the silence and might of ice, determination can carve survival. These explorers did not belong to the ice as indigenous cultures did. Their footsteps were not woven into harmony, but pressed by ambition, by hunger for discovery, by dreams of maps and glory, yet their footsteps to remain part of the frozen world's memory, echoes of human striving at the very edge of possibility. They remind us of curiosity's price, of endurance's test, of the thin line between triumph and tragedy when humans step upon ice. And so, the frozen realms hold many footsteps, those that belong, those that wander, those that falter. Indigenous peoples walk lightly, in rhythm with ice, their knowledge vast, their songs resonant. Explorers stride heavily, leaving behind relics, journals, and legends. Together, these footsteps weave a human presence upon the frozen world that is both fragile and eternal. As you listen, imagine these footsteps as layers upon snow. First, the soft tread of moccasins pressed by hunters, mothers, children who know the ice is home. Then the heavy crunch of boots, foreign and uncertain, pressing paths of ambition into the silence. Together they create a chorus of presence, a reminder that ice is not empty, but a witness to humanity's many approaches, some harmonious, some reckless, some triumphant, some tragic. Now as your breath slows, let the ice remind you. It holds all footsteps equally. It does not judge. But it remembers. It remembers the steady lines of sleds across tundra, the scattered prints of explorers fading into storm, the migrations of reindeer and dogs, the dance of penguins at the southern edge. The ice has heard the stories of human endurance, both gentle and desperate. Sleep with these footsteps in your mind. Sleep with the memory of hunters and explorers, of cultures who belong and those who dreamed of belonging. Sleep knowing that every step upon ice is temporary, yet each one joins the eternal story. The ice whispers still, holding footsteps within its silence, carrying them forward into memory, into eternity. When one listens carefully to the silence of ice, it is never truly silent. Beneath the stillness lie echoes of voices, ancient and enduring, stories whispered by ancestors who looked upon the white horizons and saw not emptiness, but presence. For the frozen world has always invited myth, legend, and imagination. Where survival was precarious and the natural world immense, people clothed the ice in spirit, giving it faces, voices, and names. The cold was not simply cold, it was the breath of a god, the shadow of a giant, the hand of a spirit that shaped the land and tested the living. Across cultures, from the Inuit to the Norse, from Siberia to Northern Europe, ice has been given its mythology. In this frozen chapter, we walk not through snowfields or glaciers, but through the timeless landscapes of story, where ice itself becomes alive in the far north, where Inuit stories were carried from generation to generation beside seal oil lamps. The ice was understood as a living companion, not merely an element of nature, but a realm of spirits. In their mythology, every being the seal hunted, the whale pursued, the dog that pulled a sled, the very wind that froze skin was animated with soul, with essence. Ice, too, carried spirit. It could be benevolent, protective, or merciless, swallowing hunters who disrespected its balance. To the Inuit, survival meant listening to the wisdom of myth. For stories were not idle tales, but guides, mapping the unseen forces that shaped their world. One such figure is Sedna, the mother of the sea, who dwells beneath the waves, her fingers severed and transformed into seals, whales, and fish. When hunters showed arrogance or neglect, she withheld her creatures, sealing them beneath ice. And famine spread across snowbound lands. To appease her, shamans journeyed in trance beneath frozen seas, combing her tangled hair, soothing her spirit, asking her to release the animals once more. Here, ice is not just the boundary between hunter and prey. It is the veil to Sedna's realm, a reminder that the frozen surface is alive with power and requires respect. To walk upon ice was to tread lightly upon the threshold of divinity. There are tales, too, of Kalupalut, mysterious beings who dwell beneath the ice and emerge to capture children who wandered to near cracks and holes, cloaked in green with hair of seaweed and voices like cracking ice. They drag the unwary into the depths. These stories, terrifying yet protective, taught children caution in a world where a single misstep on thin ice could mean death. Through myth, the ice became parent and guardian, its dangers clothed in narrative, its risks transformed into moral tales that preserved life. Across the ocean, in the sagas of the Norse, ice took another shape. The Norse saw the frozen north not as a void, but as the primal origin of all creation. In their cosmogony, the world was born from the yawning void called Ginnungagap, a space between fire and ice. From the frosty rivers of Niflheim, ice spilled into the gap, meeting the sparks of Muspelheim, the fiery realm. Where heat met cold, ice melted, and from its drops arose Ymir, the first giant, father of frost beings, ancestor of all that lived. The gods themselves emerged in opposition to these frost giants, shaping order from chaos. Here, ice was not a backdrop, but the very substance of creation, the womb from which life was born. The frost giants Jotun embodied the endless cold, the crushing might of glaciers, the storms that howled across northern seas. They were enemies of the gods, yet also kin, forces of nature too vast to destroy. When Ragnarok, the twilight of the gods, arrives, the frost will return, and the world will fall again into winter and ice. To the Norse, ice was cyclical, eternal, a force of both beginning and ending. To walk upon ice was to tread upon myth itself, upon the body of giants, upon the breath of primordial creation. The sagas are filled with imagery of frozen seas, ice-choked foreheads, storms that mirrored the struggles of gods and men. Odin, the All-Father, hung upon the world tree for 9 nights in a self-sacrifice beneath winds and frost, seeking wisdom. Thor journeyed to fight frost giants across snowy wastes. The imagery of ice was never absented, was always present as adversary, as memory, as test. To those who lived in Scandinavia, whose winters pressed hard, the mythic imagination could never ignore the cold. Ice was both enemy and ancestor, feared and revered. In Siberia, among the Chukchi and Awenki, the frozen world was populated by spirits who lived within mountains of ice and snow, their moods shaping weather and survival. Shamans journeyed in, trance across blizzards, seeking guidance from these frozen gods, ensuring the safety of hunters and herds. Storms were not mere accidents of weather. They were the anger of spirits, the stamping of reindeer-hooved deities, the laughter of beings who dwelt in blizzards. The aurora itself, shimmering across frozen skies, was sometimes imagined as the dance of souls, ancestors alive in light. In such landscapes, myth was survival, for to see the world as inhabited by spirit was to walk with respect, humility, and care. Even in Greece, far from the Arctic, frozen myths endured. The god Boreas, the north wind, was imagined as icy breath sweeping down from Thrace, carrying storms of snow, abducting maidens, sweeping ships upon frozen seas. Though the Greeks lived in warmer climes, they knew the terror of cold winds that swept mountains, and so they gave the north a god's face. In the far reaches of their imagination, Hyperborea existed, a mythical land beyond the north wind, where winter never came, where people lived in harmony under eternal sun. Ice in. This myth was not only terror, but boundary, marking the edge of the known world beyond which paradise or danger might await. In Japan, where winter presses upon the northern island of Hokkaido, the Ainu people told stories of spirits inhabiting snow and ice. The Yukiona, the snow woman, appeared in storms, beautiful and pale, luring travelers to their frozen deaths. She was both warning and wonder, the embodiment of winter's beauty and danger combined. Her breath froze, her touch drained life, yet her appearance inspired awe. The snow itself was imagined as alive, its flakes not lifeless crystals, but messengers of her presence. Again, ice was personified, given face and form, so that humans might relate to forces too vast to comprehend. In each of these myths Inuit, Norse, Siberian, Greek, Japanese, the frozen world is never mute. It is alive, spirited, speaking. The ice is mother, enemy, ancestor, spirit, and God. It provides, it withholds, it creates, it destroys. Humans, standing small upon its surface, have always sought to give it voice, to weave its silence into story. In myth, the frozen world is not mere geography, but theology, cosmology, philosophy. It is the mirror of humanity's awe and fear, hope and respect. To imagine the ice as God or spirit is also to glimpse humanity's humility. In these stories, the ice is always larger, more powerful, eternal, while humans are fragile, fleeting. Yet by telling stories, by weaving myth, humans claim a place within the frozen narrative. They make the ice a companion, a character, rather than an indifferent void. Myth becomes bridge, connecting the human heart to the vast impersonal landscapes of frost and snow. Now, let us return to the image of you, lying gently, eyes heavy, listening. Let these myths move like drifting snow across your thoughts. Imagine Sedna's hair streaming beneath the sea, frost giants striding across white plains, shamans dancing with spirits of storm, Boreas sweeping down with icy breath, the snow woman watching with silent gaze. These figures are not merely distant, they are part of the long story of humanity's relationship with ice, a story that continues in you. For even now, though we name things with science, measure glaciers with instruments, and map poles with satellites, the mythic presence of ice has not vanished. It lingers in our imagination, in our language, in our dreams. To sleep beneath such myths is to rest not in silence, but in companionship. To know that the ice itself whispers stories, stories older than books, older than maps, older than even the first footsteps upon snow. The myths remind us the frozen world is not empty, is eternal presence, eternal whisper, eternal wonder. Rest now with these legends, with these gods of frost and mothers of sea, with these giants of ice and spirits of snow. Rest in the knowledge that ice remembers not only footsteps, but stories. In its silence, all myths remain alive. The story of ice is not only ancient, it is also heartbreakingly present. Where once glaciers stretched vast and eternal across continents, where permafrost lay locked and frozen for tens of thousands of years, the frozen world now shudders, softens, and melts. To stand in the 21st century is to witness not the permanence of frost, but its retreat, its sorrowful vanishing. The modern age has brought with it a thawing, a loosening of the frozen threads that held the Earth's climate steady for millennia. What had seemed immutable ice sheets towering, higher than mountains, permafrost that outlasted civilizations, is now fragile, dissolving, ephemeral. This is the chapter where myth turns to warning, where story becomes prophecy fulfilled in real time. The vanishing frost is no longer a distant imagination. It is a truth unfolding before our eyes. To begin, let us imagine a glacier, not as myth this time, but as body. A river of ice, patient, ancient, sculpted by snowfall pressed into crystal over centuries. For thousands of years, such glaciers have moved, breathed, and carved valleys, flowing slowly toward seas, calving icebergs into waters, balancing the rhythms of Earth. But now in so many places, the rhythm falters. Where glaciers once advanced, they retreat. Where ice once replenished itself each winter with fresh layers of snow, it now thins and wastes away, warmth creeping higher each season. From the Himalayas to the Andes, from Alaska to the Alps, the glaciers of our time are shrinking, leaving behind naked stone, barren valleys, and streams swollen with their melt. It is as though the frozen rivers of time themselves are dissolving into ordinary water, their patience undone by sudden heat. In Greenland, a vast ice sheet, covering an area larger than many nations combined, melts not only at its edges, but upon its very surface. Dark soot and dust, carried by winds from faraway wildfires in industrial regions, settle upon its whiteness, lowering its albedo, the reflectivity that once bounced sunlight back into space. Now the ice absorbs warmth, its bright cloak turned gray, and meltwater pools in dazzling turquoise lakes upon the surface. These lakes fracture the ice beneath, pouring rivers downward, deep into the belly of the glacier, accelerating its slide toward the sea. Each summer grows more intense, each winter less restorative. Scientists measure, record, and warn, but the story is written in silence, to the drip of meltwater, the collapse of ice cliffs, the mournful calving of great bergs, into an already rising ocean. In Antarctica, once thought impervious, change is quickened. The western ice sheet, fragile, rests upon bedrock that lies below sea level. It's making it vulnerable to warm currents creeping beneath. Glaciers like Thwaites, called the Doomsday Glacier, groan and fracture, their grounding lines retreating, their tongues thinning, their shelves collapsing. What happens here reverberates globally, for Antarctica holds enough frozen water to raise sea levels by many tens of meters. Already, shelves of ice the size of cities have broken free, drifting into seas where they slowly melt, their departure altering currents and ecosystems alike. To gaze upon Antarctica is no longer to see timeless. Stillness it is to see vulnerability. Fragility, warning. But the vanishing frost is not confined to glaciers and ice sheets. Beneath the tundras of Siberia, Alaska, and Canada, permafrost has long lain hidden, a frozen vault of ancient soil, organic matter, and even preserved animals from ice ages past. It is a vast reservoir, older than memory, holding within it not only relics but carbon, frozen and bound. For tens of thousands of years, this permafrost endured, yet now it thaws. As temperatures climb, as summers lengthen, as fires spread. Across the Arctic, the frozen ground softens, collapses, and releases what it had kept imprisoned. Methane, carbon dioxide gases locked away in cold earth now rise into the air, amplifying, warming, feeding the very heat that melts more ground. In places, land buckles, lakes form where soil subsides, buildings tilt, forests collapse into swampy bogs. This thaw is not a simple loss of frozen earth, it is a great unsealing, an unraveling of Earth's memory, and a danger to the balance of our climate. Consider the permafrost as a great library of time. But in it are bodies of mammoths, roots of ancient tundra plants, spores of long-forgotten microbes, frozen since before the dawn of writing. As it thaws, the library opens. Some of what it releases is beauty flowers blooming after 30,000 years in ice, colors returning to a world that had never seen them before. Some of what it releases is parvoviruses and bacteria revived from frozen dormancy, unknown to modern immune systems. Most of what it releases is invisible carbon gases that join the sky, altering the delicate balance of atmosphere that has shaped the climate in which human civilization has flourished. The melting of permafrost is both poetic and terrifying, the past returning, the present shifting. The future threatened. All this melting converges in the sea. For every glacier that shrinks, for every ice sheet that releases its frozen burden, for every permafrost bog that exhales its ancient gases, the oceans swell. Already, sea levels rise, creeping higher each decade, swallowing shorelines, eroding coasts, pushing salt water into rivers, estuaries, and aquifers. For many, the rise is slow, imperceptible in daily life. Yet in places like the Maldives, Kiribati, or the marshlands of Louisiana, the rise is intimate, measured not in centuries but in lifetimes. Homes already flood, islands already vanish. The ancient partnership between ocean and land shifts, tilting towards sea. This rising is the visible signature of vanishing frost, the echo of melting glaciers written not in myth but in waterlines, across coastal walls. But to speak of melting ice is not only to speak of science, numbers, and warnings. It is also to speak of sorrow, of poetry, of presence. For there is something deeply human in the loss of ice. For thousands of years, glaciers have been part of our imagination, our sense of permanence, our sense of planet. They have been guardians of mountains, backdrops to myths, companions to explorers, mirrors to our humility. Their retreat feels like the retreat of time itself. So the earth is losing not only its frozen breath but also its memory. When ice vanishes, silence itself changes. No longer the slow creak of glaciers moving, no longer the boom of calving bergs, no longer the stillness of frozen air. Instead, there is drip, trickle, flood, a different music, a hurried one. Not the patient rhythm of ice, but the rushing of thaw. The earth feels less eternal, more fragile, more temporary. It reminds us of our own fleetingness, our own fragility, our own responsibility. And yet, Even as ice vanishes, we are still capable of listening, of honoring, of protecting what remains. The story of vanishing frost is not yet closed. It is still being written, line by line, in choices made each day, in energy burned, in forests kept or felled, in waters protected or poisoned. The glaciers do not melt alone, they melt with us. Their breath is tied to ours, their vanishing a mirror of our actions, their fate a reflection of our own. So rest, as you hear this tale, with both sorrow and awareness. Imagine the glacier, patient and ancient, dissolving into water. Imagine the permafrost thawing, releasing its hidden breath. Imagine the seas rising, slowly yet unstoppably, swallowing shorelines. And then, imagine yourself as witness, not powerless, but listening, aware, connected. For the story of vanishing frost is not only a story of loss, is a story of choice, of humanity's place within Earth's balance, of whether we will allow silence to become void, or keep alive the whispers of ice for generations yet to come, as your eyes grow heavy. Let the imagery linger. The turquoise pools upon Greenland's surface, the cracking shelves of Antarctica drifting out to sea, the ghostly mammoth emerging from Siberian thaw, the slow ripple of rising oceans. These are not only facts, but poems of change, written in frost and water. May their story settle in your dreams, not as fear, but as gentle reminder. The ice that vanishes is still speaking. It speaks of time, of patience, of fragility, of care. And in its vanishing, it asks of us not despair, but attention. Rest, then. With the knowledge that you are living in the age of melting, the age when ice that has lasted for tens of millennia finally loosens and sighs. Rest with the awareness that your breath and its breath are joined, your warmth and its warmth entwined. Rest, as the vanishing frost continues its soft song. One that will echo far beyond our years. The frozen realms of Earth have always seemed eternal. Their silence, their vastness, their luminous whiteness stretching beyond the horizon, these have long been symbols of permanence, of stability, of time itself locked in crystalline form. But the truth, whispered by the present age, is that ice is not forever. It is mortal, fragile, and already vanishing. To imagine the future of frozen worlds is to step into a vision both haunting and humbling, both sorrowful and instructive. It is to ask what Earth will become without its polar crowns, without its mountain glaciers, without its frozen breath. It is also to ask whether we, as a species, will find in this vanishing a reason for despair, a reason for resilience. Let us first imagine Earth without its ice. Not in myth, but in reality. Imagine Greenland stripped of its white mantle, its bedrock revealed valleys of stone where once a continent of ice lay. Imagine Antarctica unshrouded, its mountains no longer cloaked in glaciers but standing bare. Rivers flowing where once silence reigned. Imagine the great rivers of the Himalayas, fed by snowmelt for countless centuries, now diminished, their summer floods weakened, their lifelines to billions disrupted. Imagine the Arctic Ocean no longer reflecting sunlight with its frozen skin, but open water, dark and heat-absorbing, altering global currents, weather patterns, storms. This is not a fantasy. It is a trajectory. Already the Arctic grows warmer, faster than anywhere else on Earth. Already summer's sea ice shrinking to its smallest extents. To project forward is to see the whitecaps recede until they are memories, until the maps of childhood no longer match the maps of reality. The consequences ripple outward like waves upon water. Seas rise not in myth, but in meters. The Greenland ice sheet alone holds enough frozen water to raise global sea levels by 7 meters. Antarctica holds far more. Even partial melting reshapes coastlines, swallowing cities, eroding deltas, redrawing the edges of continents. Imagine Venice no longer struggling against tides, but abandoned to the sea. Imagine Jakarta relocated, its land given over to water. Imagine Miami's streets as canals, New York's subways submerged, Shanghai's towers reflected in flooded plains. Whole nations of islands Kiribati, Tuvalu, The Maldives would vanish, it's not as myths, but as realities their cultures carried. Not by soil, but by diaspora. The vanishing of frozen worlds is not only the loss of beauty, but the loss of homes, histories, and futures. And yet, the future of frozen worlds is not only measured in sea levels and coastlines, it is measured in atmosphere, in the thin blue veil around Earth. Ice has always been a stabilizer, a mirror that reflected sunlight, a reservoir that locked away carbon, a governor of planetary balance. Without it, the Earth warms more quickly, feedback loops tightening like spirals. Dark oceans drink in the sun's heat. Thawing permafrost exhales its ancient breath of methane. The jet stream, once guided by the poles, wavers, meanders, unmoored, sending heat waves, storms, and freezes into lands unprepared. The loss of frozen worlds does not remain at the poles. Radiates everywhere, changing the rhythm of seasons, the frequency of floods, the ferocity of fire. And yet, within this vision of loss, there is also resilience. For life, even in its fragility, adapts. Already plants creep northward, colonizing tundra as it thaws. Forests rise where once there was frost, and new species make their homes where old ones fade. Humanity, too, is capable of resilience. Cities can adapt through walls and canals, through elevated structures and floating designs. Energy systems can shift, industries can evolve, communities can relocate, not without cost, but with possibility. The loss of frozen worlds is not inevitable in its full magnitude. Much depends on choices made now, in this living present, choices that shape whether the Arctic loses all of its summer ice or only some. Whether seas rise by 1 meter or many, whether permafrost collapses entirely or holds fragments of its frozen memory, the poetic warning of ice is clear. What melts cannot return in human lifetimes. A glacier that took 10,000 years to form can vanish in 1 century, 1 lifetime, 1 generation. The patience of frozen time is undone by the haste of warming, but the hopeful resilience is also clear, though we cannot restore vanished ice. We can protect what remains, slow the melt, shield the balance, and listen to the whispers of frost. Before they fade, to imagine Earth without ice is to imagine a planet fundamentally changed, oceans swollen, its climates unstable, its myths rewritten. But to imagine Earth with ice preserved diminished, perhaps? But not amiss to imagine a planet where humanity heeds the warnings, where adaptation and mitigation find harmony, where our children and theirs can still walk upon glaciers, still see the aurora reflected upon snow, still feel the hush of frozen air. As you rest with these thoughts, let them settle softly, not as fear, but as awareness. The future of frozen worlds is not distant, it is unfolding even now. The turquoise melt pools of Greenland, the cracking shelves of Antarctica, the thinning pack ice of the Arctic are chapters of this unfolding story. To know them is to listen is to care, and to care is to act, however gently, however slowly. Let the imagery close your eyes. An Earth with crowns of white, fragile yet enduring. An Earth without, darker, warmer, changed. And between them, the narrow path of choice. Ice teaches us patience, but it also teaches us urgency. Its melting is both lullaby and alarm, both whisper and warning. And so, as the frozen worlds face their future, so too do we. The story of ice is the story of us. What melts in glaciers echoes in our cities. What vanishes in permafrost breathes into our skies. What is preserved or lost in frozen realms shapes not only the future of landscapes, but the future of humanity itself. And in this truth, even amid sorrow, there is hope, for to know is to choose, and to choose is to change. Rest then with the whispers of the frozen world. They are not yet silent. Still breathe, still shine, still endure. Their future is not yet written fully, and in their fragility, they remind us of our own power not to command, but to care. And in caring, perhaps the frozen world may remain a little longer, a little safer, a little more eternal, and so we return slowly, gently, to where we began. At the threshold of stillness, in the quiet presence of ice. When first we opened this journey, we lingered at the doorway of the frozen world, breathing in the hush of whiteness, listening to the delicate rustle of frost, leaning close to the memory-keeping silence of glaciers and snow. Now, after wandering through their histories, their myths, their life forms, their struggles, their vanishings, and their futures, we find ourselves back at that same quiet threshold. The circle closes, but not as an end, it returns as a reminder. An eternal whisper that ice carries across centuries that nothing is truly gone, only transformed, only passed into another form of memory. Ice has always been more than water made solid. It has been a companion to time itself. Each snowflake that settles upon a glacier is a page in the book of the world, each frozen layer an entry in Earth's long diary. When we walked among the ancient sheets of Greenland, when we pressed close to Antarctica's immense white heart, we were listening not to a silence but to a chorus air trapped from ages past. The sigh of forests long vanished, the breath of volcanoes long stilled, the whispers of skies untouched by industry. These frozen pages are still with us, still whispering, still keeping the story of our planet safe in crystalline vaults. But stories are not only for keeping, they are for telling. And so the ice tells us in creaks and groans and thunderous, calving and gentle dripping, that the future is being written even now. Each drop of meltwater sliding into the sea is a syllable. Each shifting crack is a phrase, each retreat of a glacier is a sentence. Together they form a language that we must learn to hear. A language of urgency, yes, but also a language of beauty, resilience, and humility. Now as we close this circle, let us imagine once more the breath of the frozen earth, the way glaciers inhale with snowfall and exhale with melt. Now the way oceans rise and fall like a chest at rest, a planetary body breathing through tides and currents. The way frost paints the world in stillness, reminding us of patience, of slowness, of the deep rhythm of seasons. To sleep with ice is to sleep with the planet itself, to align our breath with its long inhalations, to rest in its ancient patience. Do not think of the ice only as something that is lost. Think of it as something that moves, changes, travels. Ice falls as snow, drifts into glaciers, journeys through centuries, and one day melts, becoming river, sea, cloud, rain, and snow again. The cycle is eternal, even if the forms shift. In this, there is comfort. The water that once lay frozen on a mountain may now be part of the ocean, may one day drift as a cloud, may fall again as snow, and once more settle into stillness. Nothing is lost, only transformed. No, nothing is silenced, only whispered differently. Close your eyes now, and picture the world of frost as you first did when we began. Vast fields of white stretching beyond the horizon, the aurora flickering like a celestial lullaby above frozen seas, mountains wrapped in snow as though clothed in silence. Beneath the ancient breath of the earth sleeping, dreaming, that image remains. It has not gone. It lingers in your mind, in your memory, and in the very rhythm of your breath. You inhale, the earth exhales. You exhale, the earth inhales. The harmony is simple, eternal, soft. The ice is not asking for fear. It is not demanding despair, it whispers. Instead, a kind of reassurance that even in change, beauty remains. That even in loss, there is memory. That even as glaciers retreat, their stories stay with us. That even as seas rise, the rhythm continues. And within that rhythm, humanity can find both caution and comfort. So let this circle end, not in alarm, but in rest. You are safe here, listening to the eternal whisper of ice. No. You are safe in the patience of glaciers, in the stillness of snow, in the timelessness of frozen oceans. Drift into the rhythm of the frozen world, gentle, eternal, and if sleep comes now, let it be like snowfall, slow, soft, soundless. Let your thoughts settle like flakes upon a quiet field, one after another, until they blur into a white hush. Let your mind glide as though over frozen seas, carried by the calm tides of winter. Let your heart rest like ice in moonlight, luminous, serene, eternal, for the story of ice is not only about the earth, is also about you, about your patience, your resilience, your breath, your rest. Ice whispers, be still, endure, transform, remember. And so with that whisper, we close this journey. Full circle, from beginning to end, from silence to silence, from ice to ice. May the frozen world guide you into sleep, into dreams, into rest as deep as glaciers, as gentle as snowfall, as eternal as ice. The whisper continues, even as you drift. It has always been there. It will always be there. Soft, steady, eternal. The whisper of ice.